All right. So we're starting from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. We're on text 19, and it's June 3rd, 2022. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. One of you can respond.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 19. Drishta
Drishta
Bhavadbhi
Bhavadi
Nanu
Nanu
Rajasuye
Rajasuye
Chaitya
Jajasha
Krishnam
Krishnam
Dvishata
Vishatam
Api
Api
Siddhi
Siddhi
Yam
Yam
Yogina
Yogina
Samsprihayanti
Samsprihayanti
Samyak
Samyak
Yogena
Yogena
Ka
Ka
Tat
Tat
Viraham
Viraham
Saheta.
Saheta
Drishta Bhavadbir Nanurajasuye
Krishna Bhavadir Nanu Rajasuye
Chadyasya Krishnam Dvishato Siddhi
Jaidasha Krishna Vishato Siddhi
Yam Yogina Samsprihayanti Samyag
Yam Yogina Samsprihayanti Smaya Samyag
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta.
Yogena Kashtad Viraham Sahita
Drishta Bhavadbir Nanurajasuye
Krishna Bhavadir Nanu Rajasuye
Chadyasya Krishnam Dvishato Siddhi
Shadyasha Krishnam Divisato Siddhi
Yam Yogina Samsprihayanti Samyag
Yam Yogina Samspriyaranti Samyag
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta.
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta
Drishta Bhavadbir Nanurajasuye
Krishna Bhavadir Nanu Rajasuye
Chadyasya Krishnam Dvishato Siddhi
Shadyasha Krishnam Divisato Siddhi
Yam Yogina Samsprihayanti Samyag
Yam Yogina Samspriyaranti Samyag
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta.
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta Krishna Bhavadir Nanu Rajasuye
Drishta Bhavadbir Nanurajasuye
Shadyasha Krishnam Dvishato Siddhi
Chadyasya Krishnam Dvishato Siddhi
Yam Yogina Samprihayanti Samyag
Yam Yogina Samsprihayanti Samyag
Yogena Kashtad Viraham Saheta
Yogena Kastad Viraham Saheta. Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Drishta.
Drishta
It has been seen.
It has been seen.
Bhavadbi,
Bhavadbi,
by your good self.
by your good self.
Nanu,
Nanu,
of course.
of course.
Rajasuye,
Rajasuye,
in the assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira.
in the assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira.
Chaidyasya,
Chadyasya,
of the king of Chedi, Shishupal.
of the king of Chedi, Shishupal.
Krishnam,
Krishnam,
unto Krishna.
unto Krishna.
Dvishata,
Vishata,
envying.
envying.
Api,
Api,
in spite of.
in spite of.
Siddhi,
Siddhi,
success.
success.
Yam,
Yam,
which.
which.
Yogina,
Yogina,
the yogis.
the yogis.
Samspri yanti,
Samspriyanti,
verily desire.
verily desire.
Samyak,
Samyak,
fully.
fully.
Yogena,
Yogena,
by performance of yoga.
by performance of yoga.
Ka,
Ka,
who.
who.
Tat,
Tat,
his.
his.
Viraham,
Viraham,
separation.
separation.
Saheta,
Saheta,
can tolerate.
can tolerate.
Translation. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Krishna's causeless mercy was exhibited in the great assembly of Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was merciful even to his enemy, the king of Chedi, who always tried to be an envious rival of the Lord. Because it is not possible to be a bona fide rival of the Lord, the king of Chedi was extremely malicious toward Lord Krishna. In this, he was like many other asuras, such as Kamsa and Jarasandha. In the open assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, Shishupal insulted Lord Krishna, and he was finally killed by the Lord. But it was seen by everyone in the assembly that a light flashed out of the body of the king of Chedi and merged into the body of Lord Krishna. This means that Chediraj achieved the salvation of attaining oneness with the Supreme, which is a perfection most desired by the Jnanis and Yogis, and for which they execute their different types of transcendental activities. It is a fact that persons who are trying to understand the supreme truth by their personal endeavors of mental speculation or mystic powers of yoga achieve the same goal as others who are personally killed by the Lord. Both achieve the salvation of merging in the Brahmagyoti rays of the transcendental body of the Lord. The Lord was merciful even to his enemy, and the success of the king of Chedi was observed by everyone who was present in the assembly. Vidura was also present there, and therefore Uddhava referred the incident to his memory. Amaganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Visakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchikalpatiyubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanan pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 19. Trishta bhavadbir nanuraja suye chadyasya krishnam trishato pisidhi yam yogina samspri hayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham sahita. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? Yes. Okay. So Uddhava talking to Vidura, these two saintly persons in their conversation. So Uddhava is referring to Shishupal. I trust you're all aware of this story of Shishupal there at Maharaj Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice. So like Uddhava was making the point, like Shishupal was negative, he was resentful, he was hostile, he was hateful towards Krishna. But just because he had contact with Lord Krishna, he got like this impersonal liberation. Like how amazing Krishna is, and Uddhava ends that with that rhetorical question: who can tolerate separation from him? Yes, right. And so, okay. So it's described in the Brahma Samhita. Pantas tu koti satavatsara sampragamyo vayuratapi manasa muni pungavanam sopyastiyat prapada sinya vichinchitatve Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. That verse, it kind of, you would have been Prabhupada referring to that verse. Yes, that it is described in that verse. Bhaktisiddhanta gives a wonderful translation of purport that, like the yogis, by controlling the breathing and all that meditation for like millions of lifetimes, or the jnanis, to trying to differentiate spirit and matter, again, for millions of years. If they're fortunate, if they're successful, then they might get a glimpse of the rays of the Brahmajyoti emanating from the toenails of Krishna. That's what that verse says. So like how inconceivably wonderful is this person Krishna? And so the verse in the purport. Prabhupada writes, right at the beginning of the purport, Lord Krishna's causeless mercy was exhibited in the great assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was merciful even to his enemy, the king of Chedi, who always tried to be an envious rival of the Lord. Right? So Shishupal tried to be a rival. But like Krishna still was friendly towards him. Ultimately, after 100 insults, Krishna used his Sudarshan chakra to sever the head of Shishupal, and then everyone witnessed the soul that is Shishupal merged into the body of Krishna. And but it was seen by everyone in the assembly that a light flashed out of the body of the king of Chedi, emerged into the body of Lord Krishna. That's a Sayuja Mukti, a form of impersonal liberation. Yes. So it's described, actually it's described about Maharaj Yudhisthira, that this refers to Maharaj Yudhisthira's Rajasuya sacrifice. Ajatasattu means his enemy was never born. Now that's very interesting because he's a kshatriya, he's a warrior. He fought the battle of Kurukshetra where like 600 million people died, like that. But so Lord Kapila Dev, later in the third canto, much later, 25th chapter and after that, describes the qualities of a devotee. Titiksha sva karunika, tolerant, merciful, compassionate, suridam sarvadehinam, and a true friend, like reed means heart, suridam means the superior heart, a true, deep, heartfelt friend of all living entities, ajata sattva, santa, peaceful, and no enemies, sadhava sadhubhushana. Okay, so this term, ajata shatra, is especially applied to Maharaj Yudhisthira. So the devotees have that quality because Krishna has that quality, right? That those who we serve, we will develop their qualities. So we want to be careful, right? They're just even in mundane, like in like the abundance personal growth literature, like the people like take the average salary, the average assets of the people you hang out with, and that'll be your financial situation. So it's true with consciousness, with any aspect of consciousness. So those qualities of those who we serve, those who we worship, those who we admire, those who we want to be like, so we'll develop those qualities. And so Krishna at the most recent enlightenment program, was it less than 2 weeks ago at Prabhupada House, we studied this verse from the end of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Bhoktaramya gitapasam sarvaloka maheshram suridam sarvabhutanam yatvamam shanti vichati. That Krishna describes, Prabhupada calls it the peace formula. Again, shanti, ajata shatrava shanta sarva sadhubhushana. So that those who realize Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, Krishna is the best friend of all living entities, and Krishna is the supreme controller of all energies and planets, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. So the best friend of all living entities, right? Right. It's like, when we have like roadblocks, potential roadblocks to effective communication. So, and we talk about certain types of roadblocks. We look at what's the consciousness behind the roadblocks to self-exploration. It's different types of consciousness. One type of consciousness is all quickly, prematurely give advice. I'll solve your problem because I want you to see me. I want you to yes. I want you to see me as your best friend. As your best friend, I'll fix your problems, like that. Okay. And so we can, Srila Prabhupada, he would sign thousands of letters. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Okay, so ever well-wisher. So Prabhupada's our ever well-wisher because he's connecting us with our best friend. That makes Prabhupada our best friend because he is connecting us with our true best friend, Sri Krishna. Right? Such a wonderful friend. Sarvasya Janvi Disanivistu Matasmi Chaganama Pononcha. Right? That all of our foolish and all of our foolishness and idiocy and destructive acts and maliciousness through in this lifetime and through lifetimes and millions and trillions of lifetimes in the material world, trying to enjoy separate from Krishna this way and that way, and exploiting others, trying to find victims for my enjoyment. And Krishna is patiently following us, sitting right next to us in the region of the heart, in whatever we've been in the species of pig or in whatever species, sitting right next to us in the region of the heart, because really caring about us and just wanting us to be open to receive wisdom, So such an amazing friend. And that's how, like as Prabhupada signed, your ever well-wisher. So, so we want to be the best friend of all. And so in the material consciousness, like out of my desire to be adored and to be seen as special and distinctive, then like, do you see me as I'm your helper, I'm your best friend? So that's material consciousness. Okay. At the same time, we can be someone's Suridam Sarvadena. We can be someone's true friend. And that's by supporting them like in seminars and coaching and coach training. We often use the term to connect with the highest guidance within. In Bhagavatam terms, that's the Paramatma, the super soul within the heart. That's the highest guidance within. So the super soul, Andantarasta, Paramanu Chayantarastam, it's in every atom. It's in the heart of all living entities. And so that's why we emphasize. Bhaktisiddhanta says, the world stands in no need of any reformer. Okay. What's that mean? The world seems to be in terrible shape. Seems like it needs lots of reform. Well, the terrible shape of the world, and it's be, do, have. It starts with the consciousness, starts with the quality of being of the inhabitants of this household, the inhabitants of this family, the inhabitants of this community, the inhabitants of this town, the inhabitants of this nation, this planet, like that. So everything starts from consciousness. So Bhaktisiddhanta, when he says the world stands in no need of any reform, he's not suggesting, so just kind of be complacent and sit back and do nothing. No, Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, all the great acharyas, Sri Krishna, Uddhava, Vidura, Saint Vidura, they're imploring us, make a difference in the world. Yeah, make a difference with wisdom. Wisdom means realization that it all starts with consciousness. It all starts with consciousness. So, because we can try to change this and that, even we can try to clean the waters and environmental and like that. And I'm not cynical about the water and air being clean and cynical and the earth and treating the earth. I'm not cynical about that. It's about, okay, what's going to really make a difference? Because, okay, so whether we look at, the wars or the pollution or whatever situation we want to look at, or the conflicts in our own household, wherever we want to look, so, if we study it analytically, guided by transcendental sublime philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll find kama krodhas tata lobhas tasmade tat trayam chajat. We'll find that it's starting, it's because of my lusty, greedy, envious, here it's described like Shishupal was envious, lust, greed, deception, envy, jealousy, madness. So if that consciousness stays the same, even if we temporarily clean this and clean that, the consciousness is going to create the same problems, maybe in a slightly different form. An example you probably heard me use, like around the turn of the century, 1900, the environmentalists of the time, they were advocating the development of a new invention. The new invention was called the horseless carriage, the automobile. And the environmentalists of the time, 19th century, this was in the Scientific American, there are articles about this. They were saying, if we develop this automobile, the horseless carriage, that'll solve the problem on the whole planet of air pollution. Because the horse manure in the cities was causing some lung disease and things like that. So this new invention was going to be the solution to that. It's true, right? And then if we look as the decades went on, it didn't really work so well that the cars, eliminated the problem of air pollution. So it's an example. So the idea is to change the consciousness, right? And ultimately, like if we look at like Mother Bhumi, she's a devotee of Krishna. So when the inhabitants of the earth are devotees of Krishna, or if we at least, if we move towards a critical mass, okay, then naturally she supplies abundantly. And naturally, we're devotees of Krishna, so naturally we don't want to cause unnecessary violence to any animals or to Mother Earth. Like Mother Earth is not just like a sentimental thing. Mother Earth, she's actually a person. She's a demigod. So that's how we can be true friends, right? Support people, to connect with Krishna. And my approach to that, support people to connect with their ever well-wisher, Srila Prabhupada. He's our current link to the Parampara, our current Acharya. I've been in circles where they insist Prabhupada is Purva Acharya. Purva means previous, and we can see the English word previous coming from the Sanskrit Purva. So no, it's actually different. Probably I shouldn't have even said that during the Bhagavatam class. No, Prabhupada's our current Acharya, current link, fully available in his Vani form, through vibration, and in his Vapu form, through his pictures, his Murti, through following. Prabhupada wrote in the dedication. He dedicated the dedication of his pre-66 first canto Bhagavatam, dedicated to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who lives forever, to his spiritual master, who lives forever through his instructions, and his sincere follower lives with it. So that's how we can be a best friend. And anything else that might be in the name of friendship, might be sentimental, might be touchy-feely, whatever it is, but it's described in the Bhagavatam. Dharma svanustita pumsam vishvaksena katasya no padiyad yadi rati shrama eva kevalam. That, if we fulfill our different dharmas, our different responsibilities in whatever sphere of life, but if that fulfillment does not provoke enthusiasm and attraction for the messages of Sri Krishna and his pure devotees like Sri Uddhava and Saint Vidura, then Shrama Evi Kevalam, it means it's nothing but really a useless waste of time. It's useless. Of course, all the other paths, we talked earlier in this class about the paths of yoga, the paths of jnana, the paths of religion, the path of cultivating sattva in different ways. They're there. They're there to support embracing bhakti. And that's in the example of, because like Uddhava is kind of making the point here, as is Prabhupada in the purport. See, like Shishupal, of course, there's a whole story, it's Jai and Vijay, Jai or Vijay in the spiritual realm. We won't go into the whole history, quite an elaborate story that weaves itself throughout the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. But so like Shishupal, he didn't, he wasn't a true yogi. He wasn't again. He hated Krishna. He hated Krishna. But wow, Krishna was so kind. Krishna's such a friend. So like a friend means like, so Krishna had no enemies. Maharaj Yudhishthira had no enemies. Others saw them as their enemies, but they were like, Krishna was Shishupal, a genuine devotee. Like, okay, you can see me as a friend, you can see me as an enemy, but I'm going to relate to you. I'm going to support you in your self-realization, right? So like, meet people where they're at, support them in their self-realization, wherever they're at, in whatever form that takes, and that can take unlimited forms. And then the enemy consciousness, which of course, like someone like Maharaj Yudhishthira needed to adopt to fulfill his kshatriya role, but in his heart, he was like, this whole friends and enemies thing on the material platform, I don't buy into it. I don't buy into it. And that's kind of where Arjuna was at in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So it means like, you can see me this way or that. I'm dedicated to serve your highest interest. And that's not a sentimental thing. It requires understanding who I am and who you are. I'll serve your highest interest. And if I'm thinking you're this body, if I'm thinking I'm this false ego based on the body, I could serve the body, the mind, the intellect, the false designations. And then in the name of being a friend, I'm actually entangling you further in the bodily conception of life. Prahlad Maharaj uses the term Adanta Gopir Vishatam Tamisram Puna Punascharvita Charvananam. He describes that like in the name of material friendship, we send each other to more and more hellish experiences of existence just through chewing the chewed. Like kind of a gross analogy. Prabhupada used the term like if someone's chewed sugar cane, like all the juice is out, someone else comes along and then chews it again. You can think of a chewing gum analogy. So that's material life. Let me try it again. Let me try it again. And then all of that emptiness, all the suffering, which sometimes can take, I am suffering, can take in relatively light forms, and we've all had experience of severe torment and agony. We've all had experiences. If right now we're not going through something we would consider severe torment and agony, okay, good for us. But then we could think of people close to us, just like really, whether it's on the physical platform, financial, mental, relationship, shame, rage, like that. So it's tatenu kampam susumiksham anubunjana eva kritam vipakam vidvalva purbi vitadhan namaste jivite mukti pate sadayava. That's a verse in second chapter of 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's described that, so to develop the devotional mentality, that whatever is happening, especially when things aren't going according to the script I'd like to write for my life, and it's all meant, all those disturbances, right? It's all meant to deepen our enthusiasm. Let me serve Krishna. Let me serve Krishna. That's my real peace. That's my real ecstasy. That's my real joy. Let me cultivate Krishna consciousness, share it with others. And then with that consciousness, then we can be a real friend. And then the externals of the world will naturally change. I mean, starting with our own lives, starting with our own life, we can all I can look at what my life looked like before I started reading Prabhupada's books, started 3 years later after lots of prasad and chanting Hare Krishna, what my life looked like internally, externally. Wow, this is powerful transformation. So starting with our lives and then extending to people in our life and whatever, maybe apparently tiny difference that we're on this earth to do to make a difference in communities in the world like that. It starts with that transformation of consciousness, ultimately Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, like, if your attempts at helping are tamas or rajas, you're doing more harm than good, even if I'm patting myself on the back, I'm a welfare worker. He says if the attempts are in sattva, then there is some good. And to do real, actual good, well, that requires Shuddha Sattva, transcendental. And even if we're not in Shuddha Sattva, if we're representing Srila Prabhupada, who's completely Golokara Primadana Harinam Sankirtan, who's completely coming from Goloka Vrindavan, then we're an instrument for truly sublime good. And so, So Shishupal, he achieved the Sayujya Mukti. He wasn't sattvic. He was hateful of Krishna. So Buddha was making the point, just by connection with Krishna, what an incomparably, inconceivably amazing personality Lord Krishna is, who can tolerate separation from him. And it's described. So like at each day, each moment, each juncture of life, we have choice points. And we get to look, what are we choosing? And what are we choosing for ourselves? What are we choosing as far as the example we're giving to others? There's a quote by Albert Schweitzer. Maybe some of you have heard me say or saw on your own. He said that he's talking about the field of parenting. He said there are three main principles for parenting. For one, example. Two, example. And three, example. So he's focusing on the Acharya principle. And that's true for parenting or in any area. So we cannot, for the people in our lives, we cannot not set an example. We're already setting an example. So what's our choice? What are we standing for? What are we standing for? We're standing for To what extent am I standing for numbing myself through different escape mechanisms, different survival strategies, escape mechanisms? I mean, that's what material life's about, right? It's like material life is empty. There's no peace there. There's no joy. There's no fulfillment. It's not completely true. Like Bhagavad Gita talks about happiness in ignorance. Like, wow, I just slept for 12 hours. That's great. Okay, so there's it's not the real happiness of the soul. Happiness in rajas, and there's happiness in sattva, and the actual happiness, the actual bliss of the soul, that's in devotion. That's in the dynamic peace. It's described also in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ene ravindakshavi mukti maninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruya kritrina param tata patan yado patant yado nadrita yushmadan. So that Lord Brahma describes that even those like Shishupal, like the yogis or jnanis who achieve merging into the effulgence of Krishna or the body of Krishna, different types of mukti. He says, even then, like if from there they don't come to devotion, then they'll come back to material activities, to more puna, strata, chavananam, andayatanda, paniyamana, more of the blind following the blind, right? Yeah, just fine. Yeah, these people on Instagram, whatever that is, I'm not quite clear what Instagram is, I'm happy to say. Anyhow, but they seem to know what life's about. They seem to have it together. Let me try to emulate that. It's Prahlad Maharaj, the blind following the blind and falling into a ditch like that. So because the nature of the soul, who we are, C.S. Lewis said, we don't have a soul. We have a body. We are a soul. The nature of the soul is devotion. And even if in our attempts at spiritual life, even if we become detached from material desire, which is nice, it's a relief, but negation of the material is not itself positive spiritual bliss. It's just a relief, but it's a temporary relief unless we develop that devotion. The nature of the soul is to we're going to devote ourselves. The song by Bob Dylan, you got to serve somebody. You're going to serve the devil, you're going to serve the Lord. Okay. Got to serve somebody. So until we direct our propensity of service to God, God's a generic name, not for me, not a very satisfying name. So in this association, I feel comfortable to say to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with intensity. Till we direct our devotion that way, then we'll feel an emptiness. We'll feel an irritation. We'll feel an irritation because Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Srikami Sakala Shanta. As long as we have any material desires, we won't be peaceful. And our nature is to be peaceful, not like a tamasic falling asleep peace, but a dynamic peace. And this directing our propensity for devotion, it's not a desire, because it's not a material desire, because I desire to serve Krishna, I desire to increase my service to Prabhupada. That enlivens the mind and doesn't disturb and agitate the mind like a material desire. So it's a different category, if we still wouldn't call it desire. Yeah, so it's not even like, oh, that's the right thing to, of course it's the right thing to do. Metaphorically, that's like watering the root of the tree. Sankhya Yoga is like finding the root, and bhakti is watering the root. That's why it says bhakti includes all other paths. If we're watering the root, it means we found the root. So Prabhupada's giving us that bhakti, even though perhaps we've not done the millions of lifetimes of jnana trying to differentiate spirit from matter and stuff like that. Maybe we did, I don't know. So we're watering the root, and then all the branches and all the families and all the genders and all the species, all living entities in the universe benefit. So it is the right, the good, the beautiful, most beautiful thing And that's where our happiness is, when we direct our propensity for devotion and service to Krishna. And then to the extent we do that, then we're truly qualifying ourselves to be Suryadam Sarvadetam, to be the best friend of all living entities. True friend, representing Srila Prabhupada. I'll read this verse one more time. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna, text 19, spoken by Sri Uddhava to Saint Vidura. Krishna bhavadvir nanuraja suye chadyasya Krishnam dvishatopi siddhi yam yogina sam spri ayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice. Although he hated Lord Krishna, even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? Hare Krishna Prabhus. Thanks for your attention to Srimad Bhagavatam. If anyone would like to share any comments or inspirations or realizations or ask any questions at this time. Thank you. So we'll bring our Srimad Bhagavatam experience to a close. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Govinda.
Krishna.